Ever feel like some people just have that thing, that way of communicating that makes others listen? Really listen. Today, we're diving into that thing.
Okay.
The art of persuasion.
Right.
And get this, we're not talking about cheesy sales tactics
Right.
or manipulating anyone.
Yeah.
We're going deep with Dan Coe,
Okay.
who breaks down persuasion as an essential skill for the 21st century. I've got his YouTube video queued up here, and trust me, it's full of aha moments.
What's fascinating about Dan's approach is that he reframes persuasion entirely. It's not this optional extra, but something we're all doing constantly, whether we realize it or not.
Okay, so give us an example.
Yeah.
What does that look like in everyday life?
Think about how you convince a friend to see a movie you loved.
Right.
You're not holding up a PowerPoint presentation, right? Right. You're sharing your enthusiasm, maybe highlighting a scene, they find hilarious.
Okay.
That's persuasion in action.
It's like we're all playing this influence game, but most of us don't even know the rules.
Right.
And that's where Dan Coe comes in.
Yes, exactly. He argues that those who truly thrive in their careers, relationships, even just getting things done, are those who understand how to leverage persuasion.
Yes.
Consciously and ethically.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he doesn't sugarcoat it either.
Oh.
He says straight up, there has never been a time in history when mindless people weren't treated like cattle.
Wow.
That's intense.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, if you're not paying attention to how influence works, you're more likely to be influenced than to be the influencer.
It's a bit of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
Not in a fear-mongering way, but more like, hey, this is the reality of power dynamics, and understanding persuasion gives you agency.
So it's about empowerment, not manipulation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a big part of that is moving from unconscious persuasion, which can be hit or miss,
Right.
to conscious persuasion where you're intentional about your impact.
I'm already feeling the gears turning in my head.
Yeah.
But how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we go from like accidentally persuading someone to buy the wrong size coffee
Right.
to intentionally shaping outcomes in a way that benefits everyone involved?
That's where Dan gets into the nitty-gritty of frameworks and systems.
Okay.
One that really stood out to me is the pyramid principle.
Okay.
It's all about structuring information in a way that makes your message land with maximum impact.
Oh, I love a good framework. Break it down for us.
Imagine you're building a pyramid from the top down.
Okay.
You start with your main point, your big takeaway. That's the peak.
Okay.
Then you support that with your key arguments, like the pillars holding it up.
Right.
And finally, you provide the evidence, data stories, examples
Yes.
that form the solid base of your pyramid.
Okay. I can already see how this is helpful, not just for, say, writing a presentation, but even for a quick email or a casual conversation.
Exactly. It forces you to get clear on your point first, and then build your supporting arguments in a way that's easy to follow.
So much better than that thing I usually do where I just word vomit everything I know and hope for the best.
We've all been there. But here's where it gets really interesting. Dan argues that while frameworks like the pyramid principle are powerful tools, they're only as effective as the intention behind them.
Ooh. I like this is going to tell me more.
It's like having a perfectly crafted hammer, but no clear idea what you're building. You could build a beautiful house, or you could just end up smashing your thumb.
Ouch. That's a visual I will soon forget. So how do we make sure we're building houses and not, giving ourselves DIY injuries when it comes to persuasion?
It starts with understanding where your audience is coming from.
Okay.
Dan calls this the 5 levels of awareness, and it's brilliant in its simplicity.
Lay it on me. What are these levels?
Picture a staircase. At the bottom is level 1, unaware.
Okay.
These are people who are clueless about the problem you're addressing.
Right.
They're not ignoring you. They genuinely have no idea this thing even exists.
Okay, so if I'm trying to say, get my friend hooked on my favorite podcast,
Right.
hypothetically, of course, and they've never even listened to a podcast, they'd be level 1, right?
Exactly. And you wouldn't launch into a detailed analysis of sound design or interview techniques.
Right.
You'd start by piquing their interest, maybe mentioning an episode that aligns with their passions.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, you love true crime. There's this episode that's like living in a suspense novel. Subtle. I like it. So what's the next step up this awareness staircase?
Level 2 is problem aware. They know the problem exists,
Okay.
but they might not fully grasp the impact or have a solution in mind.
Right.
Back to your podcast example. They know podcasts are a thing, but they haven't felt the urge to listen to one.
So at level 2, I'd want to highlight the benefits of podcast listening. Maybe how it makes my commute more enjoyable or teaches me new things while I fold laundry.
Now you're getting it. You're connecting the problem to their life showing them why they should care.
Yes.
And that leads us to level 3, solution aware.
Hit me with it.
Now, they're not only aware of the problem, they're actively looking for solutions.
Okay.
They're ready to hear about your favorite podcast app, how to find shows, all that good stuff.
This is where I really get to geek out and share all my podcast wisdom.
Yeah.
But hold on, there are 2 more levels, right? What are we missing?
Level 4 is product aware.
Okay.
They're not just looking for any solution. They're evaluating specific products or services.
Okay.
In this case, they're browsing for podcasts, reading reviews, maybe even checking out different listening apps.
Okay, so they're getting serious. This is where I'd want to really sell them on the unique value of my favorite podcast.
Precisely. And finally, we reach the peak of the staircase level 5, most aware.
Okay.
This is your ideal listener. They're ready to hit that subscribe button, leave a review, tell all their friends.
Right.
They just need that final nudge.
This framework is amazing. So I'm already thinking about all the ways I can use it, not just to persuade people to listen to podcasts,
Right.
but in all areas of my life.
It's a game changer, right? And it speaks to a larger point that Dan Coe makes. Persuasion isn't just about crafting a compelling argument. It's about understanding the person you're trying to persuade.
It's about empathy, stepping into their shoes and figuring out what they need to hear to take that next step.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, because Dan doesn't just talk theory. He gives you the tools to put it all into practice.
Oh, yeah. He dives into his whole system using something called Cortex.
Yes.
I have to admit, when he first started talking about it, I thought it was some kind of futuristic AI brain implant.
Not quite. But it's pretty cool.
Okay.
Cortex is basically his system for capturing, organizing, and developing ideas.
Okay.
And it all starts with what he calls captures.
Okay, now those I remember. Those sounded seriously useful. It's like, how many times have you had a brilliant idea evaporate into thin air because you didn't write it down?
All the time. But with captures, as soon as inspiration strikes,
Right.
you jot it down in your phone, a notebook, wherever.
Like that aha moment when you realize you can use the 5 levels of awareness to finally convince your roommate to watch that documentary you've been raving about.
Exactly.
Bring it down.
And Cortex is more than just random notes. It's about tagging those captures, connecting them to projects,
Okay.
and building a system where you can easily find and build upon your ideas later.
So it's like going from a chaotic junk drawer of thoughts to a well-organized filing cabinet where you can actually find what you need when you need it.
You got it.
Okay. So we've captured our brilliant ideas. Now what?
Oh.
What does Dan do with all those notes?
That's where the idea dump comes in.
Okay.
It's like a brainstorming free-for-all where you get everything out of your head and onto the page without judgment. Then comes the outline phase.
This is where we bring order to the chaos, right? Taking those raw ideas and arranging them into a coherent structure.
Exactly. And this is where those persuasion frameworks we talked about earlier come into play, the pyramid principle, the 5 levels of awareness.
Right.
They become your blueprints for crafting a message that resonates.
And once you've got that killer outline, you hit the draft phase, right?
Yeah.
This is where you flesh out those ideas, bring in your personality, and really bring that persuasive magic.
It's like taking a blueprint and turning it into a masterpiece. You're adding color, texture, and all those details that make your message sing.
I'm loving this analogy. But it makes me think, with all this talk of frameworks and systems and crafting the perfect message, how do we make sure we're not crossing that line into manipulation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about intention.
Right, building houses, not smashing thumbs.
Exactly. It's about using these tools to empower, not to exploit.
So if I'm using the pyramid principle to, say, pitch a new project at work, it's not about burying my coworkers in a mountain of data to force them to agree with me. It's about presenting my ideas in a clear, compelling way that helps them see the value and get on board.
Now you're thinking like a conscious persuader. It's about transparency, honesty, and genuinely believing in what you're trying to convey.
It's like, if deep down, I don't actually think this project is a good idea, no amount of persuasive wizardry is going to make it so.
And people can sense that. You know, authenticity is key.
So it's not about becoming some kind of persuasion robot. It's about combining these techniques with our own genuine enthusiasm and integrity.
Precisely. And remember, persuasion is a two-way street. It's not about steamrolling others into submission. It's about creating a space for dialogue and understanding.
Ooh, I like that. So it's not just about being persuasive. It's also about being open to persuasion.
Absolutely. Being willing to listen to different perspectives to change your mind when presented with new information, that's all part of being a skilled communicator.
It's like, maybe my coworker does have a valid point about my project proposal. Maybe by being open to their feedback, we can make it even better.
Now you're talking. That's the power of persuasion used for good. It's about collaboration, not coercion.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I've got a whole new toolkit for approaching communication, and I'm excited to put it all into practice.
Me too. Remember, persuasion is a skill you can continually refine and improve upon.
And it's a journey worth taking. Well, listener, we've reached the summit of our persuasion pyramid. Hopefully you're walking away with some actionable insights, a fresh perspective, and maybe even a few aha moments of your own.
And if you're ready to dive even deeper, be sure to check out Dan Koh's YouTube video. We'll link it in the show notes.
Until next time, happy diving.